All right, let's talk about one of the most unbelievable financial crimes ever committed, the story of Bernie Madoff. For decades, this guy was a Wall Street legend, a true pioneer who investors trusted with billions of their dollars. But the whole thing? It was a lie. So today we're going to unravel just how one man pulled off the biggest Ponzi scheme the world has ever seen.
We're actually going to start at the very end. It's December 11th, 2008. FBI agents are standing in Bernie Madoff's lavish Manhattan apartment. And there's no fight, no denial, just this calm, bone-chilling confession. Those are the words that brought a multi-billion-dollar empire crashing to the ground. But to really get how we got to this moment, we have to go back, way, way back.
So what was the final straw? What pushed everything over the edge? It comes down to this number, $7 billion. When the 2008 financial crisis went into full swing, investors panicked. They started rushing to pull their money out, and Madoff was suddenly hit with requests for $7 billion, cash he just didn't have. The entire house of cards was about to come tumbling down.
So you gotta ask, right? How in the world did he get away with it for so long? Well, to understand the fall, you first have to understand the man. And Bernie Madoff wasn't one person. He was really two different men, living one life. There was the public genius everyone saw, and then there was the private fraudster, hiding in the shadows.
I mean, the contrast is just staggering. On one side, you have this icon of Wall Street, a guy who pioneered electronic trading, literally helped build the NASDAQ stock market, and even served as its chairman. He was as legitimate and respected as they come. But at the same time, running in parallel was this massive fraud, a secret business that didn't just start in the 90s, but way back in 1962, when he started covering up some small losses for his father-in-law's friends. Just look at how these two lives ran side by side. He starts his firm in 1960 with only $5,000. But just 2 years later, the seeds of the Ponzi scheme are planted. And as his legitimate business explodes in the 80s and 90s, becoming a huge market maker, he's also climbing the ranks of the establishment, even serving as NASDAQ chairman. His public success became the perfect cover, giving this aura of being completely untouchable. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How did he actually do it? How did he fool so many incredibly smart people for so long? Well, the most shocking part might be that the lie itself was actually pretty simple. It was just wrapped up in a whole lot of complexity.
This was his cover story, the split strike conversion strategy. It sounds super sophisticated and impressive, right? He told people he was buying a basket of really safe blue-chip stocks and then using fancy options contracts to protect against any losses and generate these nice, steady returns. It sounded plausible. It sounded safe. The only problem? It was all fake. The trades never happened, not once. Here's the fictional recipe he pitched. Step 1, buy a bunch of big, safe stocks. Step 2, buy some insurance on them in case the market drops. Step 3, sell some other options to make a little extra income. You see, it sounded like the perfect formula for consistent low-risk returns. It was easy enough to explain, but just complex enough that most people wouldn't question it. And because those returns were so steady, year after year, almost nobody did.
So where was all this money coming from? Well, Madoff didn't just go after individuals. He supercharged the whole operation by using what are called feeder funds. These were huge investment firms that would go out, gather billions of dollars from charities, universities, and wealthy families all over the globe, and then just funnel it all to Madoff. And of course, they took a huge fee for themselves for doing it.
But you know, for a crime of this epic scale, its origin was surprisingly human and kind of pathetic. According to the FBI agent who led the case, it all started with a simple, bad trade, way back at the beginning. Instead of just admitting he'd lost money for his investors, he faked the records to hide it, and from that one moment, as the agent said, it just snowballed into the biggest financial lie in modern history.
And that snowball brings us right back to 2008. See, the global financial crisis wasn't just happening in the background of Madoff's collapse. It was the direct cause. The panic sweeping the globe created a run on his fake bank, and when it broke, it exposed not just a financial crime, but a devastating human tragedy.
Now, there's this persistent myth that Madoff only tricked billionaires and celebrities. You know, you hear names like Steven Spielberg or Kevin Bacon. And yeah, they were victims, absolutely. But they were not the typical Madoff investor. The reality is something else entirely, and it's so much more heartbreaking.
The real story is right here in the numbers. An absolutely astonishing 95% of all of his victims were individuals, not giant corporations. And get this, more than 3/4 of them, 76%, had lost less than $100,000.
These weren't Wall Street high rollers. They were teachers, retirees, small business owners, and charities who put their entire life savings in the hands of a man they thought was the safest bet on earth. And while the financial toll was immense, the human cost was just immeasurable. And it cut deep into Madoff's own family. He got 150 years and died in prison. His brother Peter also went to jail. But the real tragedy, both of his sons died in the years that followed his confession. One son, Mark, died by suicide, 2 years to the day after his father's arrest. It's just a devastating ripple effect of one man's choices.
So, when all the dust settled, what did we actually learn? Why does this story still matter so much today? Well, the Madoff scandal wasn't just a shocking news story. It was a massive wake-up call that forced a complete overhaul of financial regulation, and its legacy is still all around us.
The whole affair was a huge embarrassment for the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. They had received credible tips about Madoff for years and just failed to act. So in response, they had to make some massive changes. They created special units just to hunt for this kind of fraud. They finally built a central system for tips so they wouldn't get lost in the shuffle. And maybe most importantly, they created powerful new whistleblower programs with real money behind them to encourage people to speak up. The scandal also triggered a technological revolution in fighting fraud. Before Madoff, it was all about sifting through paper trails and hoping a tip landed on the right desk. But now the industry uses AI and machine learning to watch trades in real time, behavioral analytics to spot when something just looks off. They even use advanced analysis to sniff out Ponzi schemes in the wild west of cryptocurrency. And here's a part of the story you might not know, and it's actually pretty incredible. The recovery effort. For over a decade, a team of lawyers has been working to hunt down and claw back money from people and firms who profited from the scheme. And get this, between the two main recovery funds, they have gotten back over $19 billion, returning a huge chunk of the stolen money to tens of thousands of victims. All that progress is real, it's tangible. But it leads to a really critical question for right now. We may have solved for the last Bernie Madoff, but fraud is always evolving. With these new complex crypto markets and the terrifying potential for AI to create even more convincing scams, are we really any safer today?
And maybe that's the ultimate lesson here. It reminds me of what Professor John Coffey from Columbia University once said: the next crisis, the next big one, it always comes from your blind side. The Madoff affair is a permanent, chilling reminder that in the world of money, vigilance isn't just a nice idea, it's the only defense we have. Thanks for watching.